we've been told for years that renewable energy is the future. It was time to get rid of dirty coal. It's killing the climate and we need to embrace solar and wind power. Well, to many of us, the obvious has now happened. The Australian Energy Council has sounded a warning over the increasing need for intervention to ensure the security of the nation's power grid. Well, one man who saw this coming a mile away is Queensland's National Senator Matt Canavan, who joins me now. Senator Canavan, thanks so much for your time. Happy New Year to you. Tell me, these are very concerning that government is getting more involved in the energy industry. Is it making things better or worse?
Well, Happy New Year to you too, Cory. Well, it's clearly making things worse because our power prices have gone through the roof in the last few years, and at different times it's really hard to keep all of us, all of our lights on. This is all the consequence of government intervention. The reason we've got lots of government intervention day to day, as reported today, on a daily basis almost, our regulators have to fine-tune things just to keep the lights on. The reason that's the case is because the government intervened a couple of decades ago to encourage renewable energy. There was some very interesting revelations in cabinet papers over the New Year period where Nick Minchin, one of your state's great senators, tried to push back against this in the time of the Howard government, but he lost that debate, and the Howard government introduced something called the renewable energy target. Admittedly, it only started at 5% of the energy system's needs being devoted to renewable energy, so it didn't have a big impact. But when the Rudd government came in, they increased that to 20%. And the consequence of that, as you've seen, is a lot of intermittent, unreliable energy in the system, which means it has to be managed by not the market, not just the natural forces that normally supply us goods and services. It has to be micromanaged by bureaucrats just to keep the lights on. That's happening on a day-to-day basis. It's been happening in South Australia since your blackout in late 2016. And it's been increasingly, as reported today, happening right across the system, including from North Queensland right down to Victoria.
But isn't this a case? I mean, it's fascinating to recognise that even a tiny decision like a 5% renewable energy target, which was done to placate the environmentalists or the lefties within the Liberal Party at the time, has these far-reaching consequences. As soon as you open the door a little bit and you start subsidising one industry over another, you start distorting the market and people no longer get a fair deal. There's no longer competition. The elites get to capture it by putting solar panels on their roofs because they can afford to and get benefits. And the working man gets to suffer. How many times does it take, or how long is it going to take before government realises that market forces are actually the best thing to drive these matters?
What concerns me, Cory, is we may have to go through the school of hard knocks before we do wake up to that situation. You're absolutely right about government action begets more government action. An elder of my party, the Nationals Party, John McEwen, made that point that once, he said, once government starts subsidising one part of the economy, it has to subsidise all parts to make up for the different inequities that are created by one change. And that's what's happening here. So because you're encouraging unreliable power, you then need to give priority, or what's happening with these daily directions is the energy regulator then has to make sure there's enough coal on. And right now, as a sign behind me says, right now, 80% of Queensland is being powered by coal-fired power. The lights would not be on here. Prices are quite higher in Queensland. It's been a very hot day, so people have got their air conditioners running right now. And so when the unreliable electricity is not on, the regulator to keep the lights on has to draw on coal, draw on gas, even as reports today showed, has to bring on diesel generators to keep things going. And Cory, this is the ultimate hypocrisy and almost comic nature of all of this. So someone reported to me the other day that they were down at holidaying at Rainbow Beach, popular camping spot in Queensland here, and someone had their Tesla there and they got out a diesel genset from the back of their car to charge the Tesla up to keep it running. And that's effectively what we're doing to the entire electricity system. But it is comic. Yeah. It is hilarious, right? That's what we're doing to the entire system. We're saying, let's put all these renewables in, and then at night when the sun goes down, we pull out the diesel generators just to keep the lights on. It's crazy.
Yeah, I shouldn't be laughing, but we had that in South Australia as well. I think it was the Labor Party that brought it in. We had, millions of dollars worth of diesel generators to back up the battery. Anyway, I've got to pull you up on this though, right? You said you subsidise one part of the Australian economy, you've got to inevitably subsidise others. I think, you've got to let the free market go to work. But you're a big advocate for the government getting involved in building a new coal-fired power station. Is that the best solution here, or is that just going to distort things even more?
Well, Cory, if we could have our druthers and go back 20 years ago, I would prefer not to intervene at all and let the market function. In fact, that market functioning had lowered power prices from the early 90s through to the mid-2000s. We had a big reduction, 20% reduction in power prices over that time, thanks to market reforms and market opening up. The problem we've got right now, though, is you can't just flip the switch back to that tomorrow because it takes time for markets to trust the fact that governments are not going to intervene. And we've now got a massive amount of sovereign risk because we've had decades of government intervening. Plus, we have an electricity system that's almost about to fall over, as we can see on a daily basis. So I just don't think it's realistic to switch straight back to a laissez-faire free market economy. That would probably mean we'd have blackouts. And maybe over the long term, that would be a good option. It would wake people up and do all those things. But I think a lot of damage would be done in the meantime. So I do think we do need to look at supporting investments in reliable electricity. We haven't had a major investment in anything but renewables, anything but unreliable power for over 10 years. The government is building the Snowy 2 project, which will provide a degree of certainty and reliability as long as it rains into the dams of the Snowy system.
Take you up on that one,
which doesn't always happen, but it happens most of the time. But so I think on the same basis, we need to look at investing in newer forms of power. I would add to that list, we should be looking at nuclear power as well. And look, things like nuclear power almost always require a level of government involvement, given their long lead times and high risk, a lot of sovereign risk. And unfortunately, the only people that can mitigate a sovereign risk is the government. The government has to be involved in some way.
Hey, there you go. If you offer contractual certainty, maybe financial certainty, because by forcing the banks to actually fund some of these things, that would be a way the government can intervene in making it a fairer playing field. But we could go on about this for a very long time. I will leave you with this thought, though. The Greens often talk about how many jobs are created by these renewable energy. I've never met any of these renewable energy employees until the weekend, where I met one bloke who actually works at a wind farm. I don't think he's got too many colleagues, though. Senator Matt Canavan, thank you so much for your time. Happy New Year. All the best for 2022, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon.
You too, Cory. Have a good one.